I recently added a WMD Crucible to my live performance case, and it's quickly become one of my favorite go-to modules. It emulates hi-hat sounds, and you can do it very realistically, or by changing the model, you can get some wonderfully sick sounds. I just love the range this module gives me, including a range of nice, realistic sounds. Now, after you've programmed a sound you like, of course, you'd like to have some variation to sound more like a live drummer. You can do that by modulating any of these values, lots of CV inputs. It's also typical on cymbal modules to either have an accent or an open-closed input. Well, Crucible's a bit different. It actually has two inputs, edge and mid. It gives you three different sounds. For example, here's the edge sound. I'll switch over to the mid sound. And then I'm going to use a Luigi doppio cable to trigger both at the same time. That's the third sound you can get out of it. There's also a choke input to cut the decay, velocity, and more. Now again, this is just one sound, so let's try patching a normal accent into the second trigger here. And you will hear some variation. But it's only going to give me this combination sound of these two inputs. It's not going to give me all three sounds. So what I found I need to do to get the most fun and the most variation out of Crucible is to use two different trigger sources to drive these two different inputs and let the way that they overlap and line up and don't line up create those variations. For example, I could take my accent and instead plug it into another output on my milligrids version of grids here. For example, I'm going to use the kick output. I'm going to decrease the hi-hat density, bring up the kick. Now you hear we're getting all three sounds out of it. And I can change the patterns by playing with the fill density of those two different channels. Another thing I love to use is Euclidean circles, because you can dial in different patterns, including some different ethnic type patterns, to really have a lot of fun triggering these sounds. I'm going to pull these for now, turn them down all the way. I'm going to take my main trigger out from channel 1 of my Euclidean circles, and then use my second mid input from pattern 2 on Euclidean. I'll dial up 2 hits on channel 1. And then if I dial up 2 hits on channel 2, well, they're going to land exactly the same time. This is where I'll use Euclidean circles' ability to offset a pattern to have them alternate. Now what's fun, as I mentioned, is creating some variations by using different Euclidean divisions for the different channels. It's particularly fun with both channels have different Euclidean patterns. And again, you can create more variations by offsetting the patterns against each other. You can even play with the lengths of the patterns to create even more variations. Now you can use 2 channels of Euclidean circles like I am here. Or if you want variation, you can bring back in another trigger source that creates those variations for you. I'm going to take my second output here, go back to my hi-hat pattern, out of grids, increases fill density, and introduce the ability to change. Maybe back off a little bit here. And again, we can have more fun by offsetting patterns. So think a little outside the box. Don't think one trigger per one percussion module. You can have a lot of fun when you use multiple trigger channels to drive the variations on one module like Crucible.